Before I bring up Juan Hidalgo, I'd like to invite former Congressman Brian Bilbray, Sr. to come up and speak a few words if he'd like. Sir, if you're, okay, here he is. I was looking for your helmet. Here you guys, Brian Bilbray, former Congressman from Imperial Beach.
Cheryl, I've got my mask, okay? And let me just say, I think we all agree that Cheryl, it's okay, I used to be a sound man myself. Actually, I was more lighting. You've all got to admit, of all this election year, that was the first political speech with a mask on that you could understand and relate to. Wasn't it? Being limited myself at my ripe old age, I'll try to work around the handicaps. Let me just say sincerely, I'm really here about Imperial Beach. And as you guys may or may not know, my children are third generation Imperial Beach kids. In fact, I always say that they're third generation sewage kids, Mr. Future Congressman, and you remember that. But Will is fourth generation. And I'm not saying I've known Will my whole life, but before Will was even a speck in his mother's eye, his grandfather and I played Little League on the Cubs at Imperial Beach Elementary School. So if you want to see our documentation of our relationship to this community, you might want to search around. But seriously, I'm here to say one thing and get into it. Those of you that aren't from Imperial Beach, let me tell you what's happening here. We are having an organized takeover by outside money coming in and buying our council seats before nominations are even open. You've got to understand that since Mayor Dedina got $150,000 from New York union money and won by only 54% against Jim Jenney. And let me tell you, Jim Jenney was not beat in election. He was mugged. And we all sat by and watched that happen because we couldn't believe it happened. But every city councilman that has been elected since Dedina's been elected has been chosen before the election and even before nominations were closed by outside groups that have pumped in hundreds of thousands of dollars into a poor community of only 26,000 people. And now, today, Will is running against a candidate that now he says, I used to come visit my uncle in Imperial Beach. Okay? The mayor, if I was right, I think the mayor claimed that he was a local. I guess, all the tourists that come are locals too. But somebody that hasn't even got a record of voting, carrying enough to vote once in Imperial Beach, has $95,000 of outside money to take a seat in Imperial Beach. Now, the candidate for Congress will tell you, it is illegal in the federal system for a federal candidate to take money from a foreign national. Okay? And unless it was Busby who said you don't need to be legal to vote. Remember that? Well, it was. But the fact is it's illegal at the federal government to take outside money. But you've got in Imperial Beach where 99% of all the cash going to certain candidates are coming from outside of Imperial Beach and would be illegal under the federal system. And nobody says anything. Press doesn't say anything because it's IB. I just heard somebody say one of the greatest lines in the world. The only thing that stinks worse than Mexican sewage is the financing of candidates in Imperial Beach by out-of-towners. And let me say, this isn't Democrat, this isn't Republican. This is American. This is common decency. The whole county should be outraged. I cannot, in my 45 years involved in politics, remember any community anywhere that's had this done to them. This is the most corrupt political maneuver in the history of this county. And I say that as somebody who was chairman of this county twice. So when I ask you as you go around, people need to start talking about why, where. And what's scary about this, the record has shown that in the last few years, the agenda is showing why they're buying seats of power in Imperial Beach. And the candidate against Will has publicly stated that his goal is to bring in what he calls low-income housing into Imperial Beach, as if we do not have more affordable housing than anybody else around. But that is a code word for Imperial Beach is going to be forced to take high-density, high-rise apartments that will not only destroy the quality of life in this town that we have fought so hard. And let me remind you, recall 2 sets of councilmen over this thing. And the fact is, we fought hard for that, and they now are proud to announce to us that Imperial Beach is going to be privileged to be the dumping ground for units that cities in North County wouldn't take and shove it down here in IB. And what's sad about this is the gentleman that Mr. Fisher's running against actually voted with them at Sandad when he is sworn to represent the people in Imperial Beach. And I'm sorry, I just cannot find how they could justify it. And remember, I've been in politics a long time. I've heard it all. I work with Comrade Filner, guys. I've seen all the tricks in the world. But let me just say in closing, please get out the fact of how can they call themselves liberals? How can they call themselves enlightened? How the hell they could call themselves progressive if they believe that hundreds of thousands of dollars should be taken from out of the city, if not out of the state, and brought into a working class neighborhood and buying the right of representation away from working class people. And Shell, I want to thank you for being so outspoken, because we learn by doing and representing. There's no line of partisanship here. This is basic common decency. The people in Imperial Beach have a right to have their people elected. Coronado has a $200 limit. They're a city our size. San Diego has its limits. The county of San Diego, which is at 3.5 million people, have a limit of $800. What has Dedina and his council done? Zero limit, because they've got the cash cow from outside. So when you go around, and I hope the candidate brings up, this is a classic example of what people can look forward to when the left takes over. A community like IB. So if I can ask one thing, the next week we all come together. Let's come together, make this meeting short, but come ready to walk precincts, because you and I talking together is not going to make the difference. We need to knock on doors, talk about friends. Yesterday I went up to a lady that had a sign in front of her, and I said, does that candidate live here? Because I was wondering if he actually lives somewhere in the district. I'm interested to find out. And she said, no, somebody come and just put it in front of my house. And I said, ma'am, you know you have a right not to have that sign up. She goes, good. Picked it up and threw it away. If I was not on the street talking to people and talking about the truth, that wouldn't have happened. We lost the mayor's race on Jim Jenny by 54 votes. 54 votes. In the 1 hour you are here, next week, if you spend an hour here, that 1 hour could have meant that you could have talked to 54 candidates. Actually, all you need is 25, 30, and it would have gone to a whole different way. And I'll tell you what my mother told me when I was a 24-year-old candidate running for city council in 1976. If you're too busy to win one vote at a time, you're too busy to win. Thank you, and God bless you, and thank you for coming out. By the way, no offense to anybody, I am going to get my bike, go and start making